I'm Emily of British Girl Bakes, and I'm going to show you how to decorate this fun and colourful butterfly stenciled cake. I'm starting by making a stencil for spiral swirls, using a roll of acetate and cutting out a little square, and then drawing on a spiral with a permanent marker. I'm cutting it out with scissors, cutting on both sides of my red line to make a thicker spiral and to remove all traces of the marker so I don't risk getting any of that on my cake. I'm going to use this butterfly stencil, which is from a craft shop, along with my homemade stencil, and I'll be using these coloured nonpareil sprinkles and some gold edible glitter, or sanding sugar. I'll be applying the stencils to this cake, and I'll provide details for this ombre design at the end of this tutorial. To make my colours for the butterflies, I'm using just a little bit of buttercream for each colour. You only need about a tablespoon, and you can see this is about the size of my thumb. I'm adding gel food colours with a toothpick because you only need a tiny amount for such a little amount of buttercream. I'm using a plate as a palette and preparing a few colours of buttercream, sticking with yellows and orange and some pink. To blend these colours for my stencil, I'm just scooping up a little bit of each colour on my offset spatula, or you can just use 1 or 2 colours at a time. I've chilled my cake in the fridge so the frosting sets and holds its shape, and I'm holding my stencil against the cake, pressing it flat, and spreading on my buttercream and smoothing it with my offset spatula. If you're enjoying this tutorial, please click the thumbs up button. When I peel the stencil off, I'm leaving this colourful butterfly behind, but the details aren't quite as neat as I'd like because the stencil is awkwardly big, so I'm cutting out each butterfly individually so that they're easier to handle. I'm pouring some nonpareil sprinkles onto a paper towel and dipping my finger in some water and then pressing it into the sprinkles so that they stick to my finger, and then I can press them onto the butterfly frosting, angling my finger to press the sprinkles onto the body of the butterfly and then using a toothpick to move them around and line them up. You can either hold the stencil against the cake or pin it into the cake before spreading on your buttercream. If you pin it, you'll leave tiny holes in the cake which are barely noticeable, but if you hold it, the warmth of your fingers might melt the frosting you press the stencil against, leaving some texture behind when you take the stencil off. Whichever method you use, it's important that your cake is properly chilled before applying the stencil, so that it doesn't damage your frosting. Ideally, you should leave the cake in the fridge overnight, or at least for a few hours, to prepare it for this design. When you peel the stencil away from the cake, you'll leave behind perfectly intricate coloured butterflies. If you're going to apply sprinkles to the bodies, you should do it straight away before the stenciled frosting sets, which happens quickly when it's spread onto a cold cake. When you notice the frosting warming up and softening, put the cake back in the fridge for 5 or 10 minutes before continuing. I'm going to use my homemade stencil now, pressing it against the cake and spreading on some of this light yellow frosting, and then dipping my finger in water and then in the gold edible glitter, and then pressing the glitter into the sticky frosting I've just spread. Peeling the stencil off, and I missed a bit of the spiral, so I'm pressing glitter on now and then using a toothpick to tidy it up, pushing any stray glitter back onto the spiral. More butterflies, using a different combination of colours of buttercream each time so that they're all a bit different. And if you notice any indents or texture in your frosting, where the stencil has imprinted it as the frosting warms up and softens, you can smooth them out with an offset spatula, scraping very gently to flatten the frosting. If your stencil slips while you're spreading on the buttercream, it's easiest to start again, scraping off any buttercream you've already spread with your offset spatula and then reapplying it, because it's very difficult to line the stencil up again with a half-spread design. When I'm happy with my design, I'm tidying up the cake board with my offset spatula, scraping off any buttercream smudges, and then piping a border on top with white buttercream in a piping bag with a 1mm tip, piping spirals that overlap each other all around the cake. And I cover this technique in detail in my online course on 10 cake decorating techniques. I'm sprinkling on some nonpareils at the end, the same colours as I used for the bodies of my butterflies, and then filling the middle of the top of the cake with them as well. And there it is! I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you'd like to go back in time and see how I prepared this cake before I started with these stenciled decorations, You can join my VIP list, which is free, by clicking the link in the screen or in the description below this video, and you'll receive exclusive tutorials that I share with my VIPs only, including the starting process for this cake. Thanks for watching!